Well, greetings, everybody. This is your favorite speaker, Dr. Ronald Brown. And today I'm going to be taking you on a very exciting trip to Rome. As you can see from the picture, there's me in front of the Arch of Constantine with the wonderful Colosseum on the right. Well, we're not going to be visiting Rome as a tourist visitor, but we're going to be visiting one of the grand streets of Rome. And this is the Via Imperiali, or the Imperial Grand Avenue. This is one of the great grand avenues of Rome and of the world. In fact, many of you have probably visited the Champs-Élysées in Paris, or strolled up and down Fifth Avenue, or Broadway, or even Wall Street, one of the grand avenues of the world. Of course, there's a Paseo de la Reforma in Mexico City, Nevsky Prospect in St. Petersburg, the Grand Avenue of the Pharaohs in Luxor and Karnak in Egypt, where I just came back from. So I've always been fascinated by the grand avenues. They are more than an avenue, they are a stage. These are the stages where great victories are celebrated. Think of the Nazis walking down the Champs-Élysées, celebrating their great victory over France. Or think of Peter the Great riding in his carriage down the Nevsky Prospect to celebrate his new imperial capital. Or, of course, here in New York, where I live, think of Fifth Avenue, whether it's gay pride, whether it's a salute to Israel, whether it's Muslim Day parade, whether it is, of course, St. Patrick's Day parade, Fifth Avenue, or the ticker tape parade on Broadway. These are the stages where countries, cities celebrate their greatness. So today we're going to be visiting the Via Imperiale in Rome. So why don't we get started? Well, I have visited many of the grand avenues of the world, so I can compare them. In the upper left, we see the Paseo de la Reforma, the Grand Avenue of Mexico City. Below that is Fifth Avenue. You can see St. Patrick's Cathedral. In the upper right is the Mall, as they say in Britain. We would say the Mall, but they would say the Mall, M-A-L-L. And there you can see a royal procession going from the Admiralty Arch in the distance back to Buckingham Palace. This was just in the news because Queen Elizabeth died, and then you had the crowning of King Charles and Queen Camilla parading down the only street in Great Britain which is paved royal red. And below that, there's me on one of my many trips to Paris with the Champs-Élysées and the Arc de Triomphe in the background. Well, every ancient city has, of course, had its Grand Avenue. The picture on the right, you see the great Grand Avenue of the ancient Aztecs. In fact, nobody knows who built the Great Pyramids and the Grand Avenue of Teotihuacan. Well, the Grand Avenue of Mexico City is very important because it is linked not just to greatness, but it was linked to legend. And his grand avenues have a history, like Peter the Great founding his new capital for his new Europeanized Russia. Well, the Mexicans believe that the Aztecs were a nomadic people wandering around in the deserts of northern Mexico, possibly Texas, leaving their ancient homeland of Aztlan and wandering, looking for a new homeland. Well, their god, Huitzilopochtli, appeared to one of the leaders and said, "You will wander the earth, you will wander North America until you come across a cactus. On that cactus will be perched an eagle, and in the eagle's mouth will be a rattlesnake. And when you see that, you will know that this is your new homeland." And so what we call today Mexico City was founded by the Aztecs when they found their grand vision of the eagle in 1324. Well, there was already an ancient city there, thousands of years older, with its ancient pyramids. So the Aztecs basically continued the heritage of their ancient capital. Well, other legends abound. The ancient Etruscans believed that they were an ancient people who emerged from distant mythological past and built parts of ancient Rome back in the 800s of before the Common Era. Well, when the Romans took over and they decided, well, we have to have an ancient legendary past. We have to have a mythical past. So the Latins, when they conquered the Etruscans and took over Rome, they said, well, we also, like the ancient Aztecs and like the ancient Hebrews, were once a people coming from somewhere else, and we were shown by God that this would be our new homeland. So the Aztecs found Mexico City and the pyramids. The ancient Hebrews, according to their beliefs, were given the land of Canaan, invaded and slaughtered off the inhabitants, and made it their new homeland. Well, the Romans, the Latins did the same thing. They believed that they were actually from ancient Troy. And when Troy was destroyed, a handful survived, and they went and found the ancient city of Rome of the Etruscans. And in 753 BCE, they established Rome as their new capital. So once again, every city is linked with myth, with beliefs, with legends, whether it is Jerusalem, whether it is Rome, whether it is Mexico City, or Fifth Avenue, one of the grand avenues. We have to shroud our grand avenues in myth and mystery. Well, from the city of Rome, the Romans, once they took it over from the Etruscans, began building their empire. Well, first, it wasn't an empire, it was a republic with a constitution. 2 consuls were elected by the people. They had elections, a senate, vicious debate, separation of powers, checks and balances. That's why Washington, D.C. is built in Roman and Greek architecture, because George Washington believed that the American democracy came from ancient Greece and Rome. He did not quote from the Christian Bible or the Jewish Bible or any other religious books. When he was building his new republic, he took terms like Senate from the ancient Roman Senatus. And so gradually Rome emerged as a great city and founder of a great empire. Well, Rome is not an ideal city for grand boulevards for the simple reason that it is hilly, sort of like San Francisco. You're going up and down. In fact, the famous 7 hills of Rome, which you can see on the map in the left. On the Tiber River was the port for the ships to go down to the coast, and the wall was built by 7 wall, surrounding and incorporating the 7 hills into this new city. Gradually, it expanded, going from the red area, which we see on the right, the main downtown Rome, and expanding northward, southward, and across the Tiber River. Rome emerged as a great city of the Roman Republic. Well, a lot remains from the ruins from the Republic period. The Forum, the main commercial area. On the right is one of my favorite temples. This is the Temple of Portumunus from the 4th century BC. Pantheon, 27 BC, magnificent domed building. When most people go in there, they look up at it and they admire it, but they don't realize that it was the Romans who invented concrete, cement, which our buildings are built today. It was the Romans who built the Pantheon out of cement. So that is how the dome is standing there. It's not stone, or it's not steel or wood. It is cement. The central feature of ancient Rome was the Circus Maximus. This was the grand theater, a stadium where you'd have horse races, and it was the grand entertainment complex of ancient Rome. It's no longer there, but the square is there. Today, the building is gone, but the imprint remains in Rome. It is surrounded by churches and palaces, hotels, restaurants, and it is a big open oblong square in the middle of Rome. Well, in ancient Rome, the main ceremonial drag was the Via del Corso, which dates from 220 BCE. It was also called the Via Lata, which means the broad way. Sometimes it was called the Via Flaminia. But as you can see from the map on the right, it was the grand drag going through the heart of ancient Rome. You see the Porta del Popolo, the gate of the people. Below that, you see another one of the gates leading through this grand avenue. This was the Fifth Avenue. This was the Broadway. This was the Champs-Élysées of ancient Rome. Victorious generals, as well as defeated generals, paraded down the grand avenue. Ceremonies of religious nature, political, were carried out on this grand avenue. The Roman Forum was the main commercial area, and you see the ruins of the commercial district. It was filled with houses, with palaces, and in fact, every time I go to Rome, I see that they have demolished another cluster of buildings, which you can see on the right and on the left, and are beginning to expose more areas of the ancient Forum. That's me on the right, bad picture, no good, not good sunshine, but you can see it's still me on one of my visits to Rome. Well, the Roman Empire and the glory of Rome continued to expand, taking over Britain, going the whole way up to Scotland, North Africa, Egypt, land of Palestine, Syria, modern-day Turkey, even up into Romania. That's why the Romanian language today is a Latin-based language, like Spanish, French, Portuguese, Italian. Romanian is a Latin-based language, sort of an island of a Latin language with Slavs to the north, to the west, to the south, and the Black Sea to the east. So it's an island of Latin culture. The Colosseum, one of the glories of Rome, another grand, the equivalent of a football stadium. Well, The Romans were very realistic. When they made a statue of a woman who was beautiful, they made her beautiful. But they also realized that not everybody remains young and beautiful or handsome. They do get aged. And so we see the variety of Roman cultural expression. Well, gradually the Republic gave way to the Empire. Augustus Caesar. That's where we get the name Caesar. Caesar is the origin of Kaiser, of Rome, of Tsar, of Russia, and other imperial titles. So everybody, every ruler looks back to the greatness of Augustus Caesar, who ruled from 27 to 14, passing over the period of the time of Jesus, year 1. And the empire continued to expand, taking over areas along the Black Sea, Iraq, deep into the heart of the Caucasus, Armenia and Georgia, down deep along the Nile River. So Caesar transformed Rome from Rome of the Republic, elections and Senate, to Rome of the emperors. And this is the imperial Rome. Well, of course, every imperial ruler, whether it's Mussolini or Hitler or any other ruler of greatness, has to leave his mark on the city. So the emperors left in Rome their triumphal arches, their palaces, always leaving their mark behind, much like the pharaohs did in Egypt with their temples and their pyramids. The city was further decorated, the Arch of Constantine, the first Roman Empire to become a Christian. You have the Circus Maximus, and today you see what it looks like. It looks like a big open field, but you can still see the ruins on either side. The Arch of Titus from the 1st century AD, with its very famous inscription showing the destruction of Rome and the carting away of the temple treasures to Rome. Well, the Roman Empire, like all empires, collapses. The barbarians from the north, whether they were the Goths and the Vandals and the Huns and the Hungarians and all kinds of other people, invaded, conquered, and destroyed Rome. It was only the Eastern Roman Empire, what we call the Byzantine Empire, based in Constantinople, that survived for another 1,000 years. So every empire that rises must fall. Well, the memory of Rome remained. The Byzantine Empire, at times under good rulers, expanded and took over even parts of Italy, Rome itself, Ravenna on the Adriatic, even expanding at times up into North Africa, southern Spain. But its heartland remained the Balkans, modern-day Greece, Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Yugoslavia, and the modern-day Turkey. On the right, you see Emperor Constantine, the Emperor of Rome. Well, everybody wanted to recreate Rome. Everybody remembered Julius Caesar and the glory of the Roman Empire, from Scotland to deep into Africa, from Iraq way over to Spain and Portugal. So when Charlemagne decided that he was going to become an emperor, of course, he looked back to ancient Rome and established what historians call the Holy Roman Empire. In fact, the Latin name is the language that was used by the educated people at that time. was the Imperium Romanum Sacrum Nationis Germanicae, which means the Imperial Roman Holy Empire of the German nation. And there you see Charlemagne on the left, ruled from 8 to 814, and you see it included huge chunks of modern-day Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, northern Italy, huge areas of France, Holland, Belgium, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, and it was a major empire. But once again, Charlemagne, Charles the Great, as it would be in English, looked back to ancient Rome as the source of his inspiration for a great empire. When Vladimir the Great declared himself the new emperor of the Russian Empire, he too looked back to ancient Rome. And he declared that, in fact, the Russian emperor is the direct heir to Julius Caesar and the great emperors of Rome, as well as the emperors of the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire. And he declared himself the new Tsar, once again derived from Caesar. And so the Russians believe themselves to be the heir to the Roman Empire and the glory of Rome. In the middle, you see Vladimir Putin today, portrayed as both a saint, since Vladimir was canonized as saint by the Russian Orthodox Church, but also the ruler, holding the earth with the cross on it in his hand, wearing the crown of Vladimir the Great and the emperors of Russia. Well, of course, Vladimir was the first Tsar of Russia, and the first capital of Russia was Kiev, which was later moved to the new city of Moscow. Well, the Catholic Church, when it took over as the dominant religion of Italy and Western Europe, it simply adopted the vision of Rome as the capital of a great empire. Whether it was a military empire sacking other nations and looting other nations, or in the vision of the Catholic Church, Rome was the seat of a new empire, a religious empire. St. James the Just was considered the first bishop of Jerusalem, but he was murdered by a Jewish uprising. And gradually, with the destruction of Jerusalem, Rome emerged as the capital of the Roman Empire. Well, of course, the Romans were no lover of Christians either. They persecuted the early Christians as much as the Jews and other pagans did. But gradually, based in Rome, the Catholic Church emerged as the major church of Europe. Once again, the memory of Rome remained very powerful when the German Kaiser, again, Kaiser coming from Caesar, unified Germany, defeated France in 1871. He declared himself no longer the King of Prussia, but he declared himself the Caesar of a new German empire. So the memory of Rome, the glory of Rome, remain very powerful in the collective European consciousness. In fact, the triumphal arches, which dominate Rome, ancient Rome, have become a symbol of greatness today. In the top left, you see an arch, the bottom, the Arc de Triomphe, The one on the right is the Arch of Bombay or Mumbai. Below that, you see the great Arch of Peking. So every empire has to have its arches. Think of Washington Arch in Washington Square in New York City. Roman architecture dominates political power. The pillars, Greek, and the domes, Roman. State capitals, likewise, imitate the capital of Rome and Washington, D.C. This was the decision by George Washington, once again to show that American democracy is not rooted in religion, whether it's Christian or Jewish or Hindu or anything else. God doesn't make decisions and tell everybody what to do. The people decide. And so American democracy looks back to ancient Rome. Even modern leaders, there we see Hail Caesar by people who viewed the American President Obama as another Caesar going to unite the country and make America great again. In the middle is George W. Bush as a Roman emperor. Donald Trump, often portrayed as an emperor. Well, every empire rises and falls. So when we talk about the decline of American greatness, such as the picture at the bottom on the left, we see Obama playing golf while Washington and the American government decline. So even people critical of a president declare him to be another brutal Caesar. And on the right, we see a presentation of the Republican attempt to overthrow the election of Joseph Biden, showing the barbarians attacking the Capitol building. Well, ancient Rome and its Via Imperiali and its grand avenues, of course, ended up becoming just the capital of a little Italy. 1871, it was Victor Emmanuel II who was proclaimed king of a new united Italy. Because for centuries, southern Italy had been dominated by the Greeks or the Byzantines or the Spanish, or northern Italy had been occupied by the Austrian Germans. Huge areas of what is today Italy had been occupied by France. And the remainder of Italy was chopped up into little semi-independent kingdoms. And so in 1871, a new Rome was declared the capital of the Italian kingdom. Many new monuments were built. The Vittorio Emanuele II Monument of 1881. It's commonly referred to as the typewriter because it sort of looks like a typewriter. But this was the altar of the fatherland with the King Emmanuel II on his horse, once again celebrating a revived Italy and a reborn Italian greatness. Well, of course, along came Benito Mussolini, who ruled from 1922 to 1943, and he was intent on not just making Rome the capital of a little Italian republic, but restoring the greatness of ancient Rome. Now, he didn't crown himself Caesar, but he adopted a lot of the Roman symbolism. For example, he was a fascist. Well, the fascis is this Roman war axe, which we see on the right. And he very often appeared in for photographic sessions beside the ancient Roman emperors. So he, on his hat, should wear the words, "Make Italy great again." Well, he was a great builder. And here we see examples of the stark, powerful Roman fascist architecture. The top left, you see a stadium, but it's always surrounded by typical Roman statues celebrating the glory of the Roman manhood, soldiers out once again to create a Roman empire. The right, you see an obelisk, again celebrating the glory of Rome with very stark buildings behind it. Not elaborate, not decadent, but stripped to the bone, powerful expressions. And this was for his 1942 proposed World's Fair. Well, he set off to make Rome great again. Well, by the time Mussolini came to power in the 20s, most of Africa and the Middle East had been grabbed by the European powers. French took the big red area, the English took the dark blue area, the Germans had the green colonies, England had South Africa, the Belgians, little tiny Belgium, had a huge colony in the heart of Africa. Portugal had the two big yellow areas. Well, the only areas that Mussolini could grab were Libya, which you see in the north, which became the Italian colony, and Ethiopia, gradually expanding into the heart of Ethiopia, the vicious war, defeating the Ethiopian soldiers on horseback with his tanks and machine guns. So he was going to build a new Roman Empire. Well, of course, to celebrate his greatness and the glory of Rome, of course, like every other emperor, every other great leader, he needed a grand avenue. George Washington laid out Pennsylvania Avenue, the great theater for American funerals, dedication of major events, the inaugurations of presidents, great military victories. And so Mussolini came up with the idea of building a new grand avenue through the heart of Rome. Well, his grand avenue was going to go from the Colosseum, probably one of the most memorable buildings of Rome, straight through the city, going diagonally. Now, of course, it goes around the great marketplace, and Rome was filled with ruins of temples and of forums. At the bottom, you see the circus, the grand area for horse races and stuff. And you see other famous buildings. The Forum is right in the middle of the picture, and of course the Colosseum. And this was going to be his new grand avenue through ancient Rome. Once again, to show that Rome has been born again. Rome is back. Well, of course, like any great builder, the city had to pay a price. And so, for example, you see from the map, going from the Colosseum down to the Piazza Venezia and beyond, it had to demolish a lot of buildings. Well, this is very much like Robert Moses in New York, when he ended up redesigning New York area for the age of the automobile. He cut through old Italian and Jewish and German neighborhoods, demolishing thousands of buildings, telling the people, well, move somewhere else. And in fact, he built giant skyscrapers for them, massive housing complexes. for these people who he had to displace. Most people in New York either love Robert Moses or they hate him. He was the great builder or he was the great destroyer. Well, to build a new Grand Avenue, you have to pay a price. Well, when the Emperor of Mexico decided to build the Paseo de la Reforma, he was lucky because he basically stayed out of old colonial Mexico City and built his new Royal Avenue from his palace, Chapultepec Palace, which was outside the city, built it through a largely empty landscape right up to the old city of Mexico. So you didn't have to destroy very much, just had to build it. Same thing with the Nevsky Prospect in St. Petersburg. When Peter the Great laid it out, there was nothing there, it was swamps. And so he simply laid out his Grand Nevsky Prospect, and he ordered all of the important people in Russia, move to the new capital, build a palace. This is going to be your new home. The Baron de Haussmann in Paris, when he laid out the Champs-Élysées and the other grand boulevards, he was like Robert Moses. He just took a map, laid out his new avenue, and said, if you're in the way, get out. Which is one of the wonderful things about Paris. When you walk down the grand boulevards, just turn to the right or to the left down a smaller street. And just behind these big, beautiful monuments and buildings, you see Paris, narrow streets, very much like on the map you see here. When the Via dell'Imperatore was built, the buildings on both sides were demolished, but behind those buildings were the narrow streets, built, many of them in the Middle Ages, for the age of the horse and buggy. At the top picture, you see how it looked before Mussolini decided to carve out his new avenue. You see the Colosseum. Below, you see his Grand Avenue, basically cutting through a park, demolishing hundreds of buildings, and lining the Grand Avenue with his planned monuments. So if anybody's going to become an emperor here and take over New York or some other city, get ready to demolish a lot of buildings to make yourself not very popular. Here we see the building of the Via Imperiali. In the distance, you see the typewriter, the monument to the unification of Italy. So he's basically, this avenue is linking ancient Rome of the Colosseum with the new united Rome of Victor Emmanuel II. So it is an avenue that has a real meaning, a direct link between the glories of ancient Rome, the unification of Italy, and the restoration of the Roman Empire. And you can see the buildings on the right and on the left are being demolished straight ahead. If you look at the picture, the buildings are still standing, blocking the new highway. Churches were demolished, palaces were demolished. Nothing was going to stand in the way of the new Roman Empire. Well, like every grand avenue, as I said at the very beginning, an avenue is more than just a street. It is a stage. Here on the left, we see Mussolini's troops marching down the still unfinished Via Imperiali. You can still see the smaller buildings are there, the ruins of buildings on the left, but it had already become a stage for his victorious soldiers returning in battle against the Ethiopians, against the people of Libya, building his world empire. Make Italy great again. Make Rome imperial again. On the right, you see another military parade going down to the Vittorio Emanuele monument, and where these people are sitting is in the Colosseum. Once again, you see the direct link between ancient Rome, a restored, united Rome, and marching off into a restored Roman Empire. Well, as we know, Mussolini was in league with Adolf Hitler, and when the German troops came to celebrate some great victory, well, the swastika was on the flag. And so, once again, in league with the Emperor of Japan and the leader, Hitler, the Führer of Germany, Il Duce, the leader of fascist Italy, was about to reshape the face of the world. Italy would have a big chunk of southern France and of the Middle East. Germany would dominate Europe and North Africa. Japanese would dominate the Pacific. Well, as we all know, Mussolini's dream was not realized. And on the right, you see the victorious American soldiers marching down the Via Imperiale. Here again, the Via Imperiale, which was once a stage for the glories of a reborn Roman fascist empire, was once again reduced to a country under American occupation. And so, to prove the point, the American soldiers marched down the Via Imperiale to mark the beginning of a new age and the end of the fascist dream. Well, the Via Imperiale continues to be a main drag. The top left, you see a beautifully decked out regiment of guards from the Italian military. Certain days, especially on a Sunday, the Via Imperiale is closed to traffic and it is opened to bicycles. The Paseo de la Reforma in Mexico City is also closed to traffic on Sundays, and it is filled with bicycles, with skateboards, with walkers parading down the Grand Avenue of Mexico City. Gay pride, of course. What better place to celebrate the liberation of millions of gays and lesbians and trans and everybody else, all the sexual minorities? What better place than the grand stage for celebrating Roman glory? So here again, we see that an avenue is more than transportation. Last year, I was in Paris for New Year's. So I went to the Champs-Élysées, which of course was blocked off. And there were well over 1 million people thronging the avenue to see the fireworks and to welcome in the new year. Made sort of Times Square in New York look rather pathetic as a place for celebration. But even in New York, don't forget, Times Square is on Broadway. And so it is also a stage for celebrating great events. Don't forget, it's Broadway where we have our Thanksgiving parade. Of course, launching the great shopping season, going from Thanksgiving to the end of the holiday season with New Year's. The beginning of the holiday season and the end of the holiday shopping season all take place on Broadway. So the Via Imperiale, no longer called the Via Imperiale, but it is still the main stage for grand Roman events. And so the avenue links the ancient Roman glory with the unification of Italy and its aspirations to be a great world empire again. Now, this link between ancient glory and modern aspirations is a common theme today in politics. Seems a lot of people want to build their own Via Imperiales to show that Iran, which once had the great Persian Empire, is back. The Shah of Iran, when he was ruling Iran, he went to the ancient Persian capital of Persepolis, spent billions of dollars on grand events, great shows of the ancient glory of Persia, and under him, the glorious vision of a great Iranian empire stretching across the Middle East. Well, this dream was taken over by the Ayatollah Khomeini, which was again going to make Iran great again. But rather than going back to the ancient pagan Persepolis, the Shah of Iran was going to make Iran Islamic empire, spreading Shia Islam throughout the Middle East. I just returned from Egypt, where everywhere you went, you saw pictures of President Sisi. And here you see a street scene in Arabic with Sisi on every picture, but yet he is evoking the pyramids of ancient Egyptian greatness. Make Egypt great again when it ruled deep into the heart of Africa, the Middle East, and across North Africa, when Egypt was powerful. In fact, I visited his brand new capital city, which doesn't even have a name yet, being built out in the desert. It has been, the large number of the buildings are already finished. Government buildings, the Capitol building for the Senate and the House of Representatives, which under dictator Sisi won't have much power, but yet it is a symbol of a restored Egyptian greatness, a grand avenue filled with monuments and with murals celebrating the greatness of President Sisi's predecessor, the Pharaoh Thutmose, the Pharaoh Ramses. In fact, everywhere you go, you see statues of Ramses II, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, Pharaoh of ancient Egypt. So just like the Via Imperiale in Rome links ancient Rome with the present, so grand avenues, whether restored in Iran or the new avenues of the new capital of Egypt, link ancient glory with the rather sad current state of a country. So if a country like Iran is looking to future greatness, it links its dream of future greatness to its ancient history. Vladimir Putin is doing the same thing, viewing himself as another Peter the Great, both Saint Vladimir, his ancestor, and Peter the Great, the political glory of the Russian Empire. The bottom right, you see President Xi of China, once again restoring the greatness. Look just behind his head. Oh, you see the two stars, but below that, you see the forbidden palace of Peking, with himself sitting on the throne. Once again, make China great again. And above that, we see Caesar Donald Trump. Once again, even the phrase, make America great again, implies that we were great at one time and we lost it. And so he is here to restore American greatness, like Mussolini was going to restore Roman greatness. Now, as far as I know, Donald Trump hasn't planned to build a brand new avenue through Washington, D.C. to celebrate the restored American greatness. But if he does win the next election and has a second term in office, he just might well do that. Or, even more interesting, and many people have suggested this, that it's time to drain the swamp. So maybe the United States should build a brand new capital in the geographic center of the United States. But of course, it would have Greek and Roman architecture, triumphal arches, and of course, it's going to have a grand ceremonial avenue leading from the palace of the president or dictator or Caesar down to the Capitol building with its glorious Roman dome and Greek pillars. Israel itself is out to make Israel great again. West Bank settlements expanding, ethnic cleansing in Jerusalem. Israel looks back to the age of King Solomon and King David, when Israel ruled a vast empire from the Euphrates, their land claim, which included huge areas of Turkey, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Israel, Palestine. That is the dream of the Israeli restored empire. Now, they haven't gotten to the Nile yet, but this dream of restoring Israeli greatness is deeply rooted in Israel. The same thing with Modi in India under the BJP, the Hindu Nationalist Party. Make India great again. He remembers the days when India ruled a Hindu empire that included Pakistan, Afghanistan, all of India, Bangladesh, Thailand, Burma, down into Indonesia. I visited not long ago the great temples in Cambodia of Angkor Wat. We tend to forget that those were Hindu temples when Cambodia was a Hindu state, part of the great Hindu empire, which stretched from Afghanistan down to Indonesia. So once again, looking backward to past greatness. So whether it's make Russia great again, make Iran great again, make India great again, make Israel great again, this importance of the once glorious past and its loss is a very powerful element in the modern world. When the Brazilians decided to make Brazil great, not again, but for the first time, what did they do? They built a brand new capital, Brasilia, in the middle of the jungle with a giant grand boulevard going from the commercial capital, stretching down to the Parliament building with a glorious Roman dome. Probably one of the widest avenues in the world. In fact, I think the broadest avenue on the face of the earth is in Buenos Aires in Argentina. But again, the importance of a grand boulevard to show the greatness. Well, Rome remembers its ancient past. Well, it lost World War II and lost its colonies and became just another country in Europe, and a minor one at that. When the Europeans in 1957 decided that it was time to put to rest the history of European wars, where France and Germany were fighting each other, France and Spain, Germany and Russia, put that history to an end and begin a new age, not just for Italy or Germany or France, but for all of Europe. So it was the Treaty of, where else but Rome, that brought the European Economic Community, which in 1957 was France and Italy and Germany, with Luxembourg, Belgium, and Holland. Well, today we see it on the right, the European Community expanding into Eastern Europe, Poland, Greece, Bulgaria, but once again hearkening back to the glorious history of ancient Rome. Well, Rome remains a major memory, not just because of past greatness attempting to restore itself, but an entire literature in the United States comparing the decline of the United States to the decline of Rome. The New Rome, the fall of an empire and the fate of America. Iggy Pop, America is Rome. Are we going the way of ancient Rome? Ancient Rome and modern America. Are we Rome? The fall of an empire and the fate of America. So the image of Rome as a great empire that sought to reinvent itself as the Holy Roman Empire, as the Byzantine Empire, as Russia, the Third Rome, even the United States. Don't forget, it was George Washington who declared New York to be the capital of a future great empire. That's why New York is called the Empire State, and New York City is the Empire City, a new Rome. Well, Rome, of course, has captured the imagination of films, ancient Rome, such as the Centurions, the phrase, when in Rome, Roman holiday film you can skip, but it is Gregory Peck and Audrey Hepburn. I love Federico Fellini's Roma, showing all of the decadence. Films about Julius Caesar, once again celebrating the glory of ancient Rome. Well, that brings us to an end for this exploration of Rome and the power that the memory of a city can remain and inspire the present. The fact that Rome had its glorious period and then declined, but then was reinvented continuously. The Holy Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, America as a new empire, and of course Mussolini's very dramatic expression of building a grand avenue to announce the return of Roman greatness. So grand avenues, whether they're Paseo de la Reforma or the Champs-Élysées, Nevsky Prospect, or the grand Imperial Avenue of Peking, going from the Forbidden City north to the Bell Tower and miles south to the Temple of Heaven and the Temple of Agriculture. Here again, grand avenues are part of the imagination. I'm sure that when Americans and Europeans and other people start building cities on Mars, of course, they're going to have a grand avenue to celebrate the new civilization. Well, this is Dr. Ronald J. Brown. If you have any comments, please feel free to send me an email to ronbrownmedia@gmail.com. That's me on the right. This is one of the bridges of Rome on one of my trips. This is the end of this talk, and I hope you have enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you sometime in the future. So, once again, Dr. Ronald Brown signing off.